培养钢铁给背，土根总可保罗上扎背，下拉索的。弥多心经观自在父，心神波罗蜜多时，照见五蕴皆空，度一切苦，舍利子，舍不异空，空不异色，舍即是空，空即是说相信是一复如是，舍利子，是诸法空，不生不灭，不垢不净，不增不减，是故空中无色无受想行，无眼耳鼻舌身意，无色声香味触法，无眼界乃至无意识，无明亦无明尽，乃至无老死亦无老死尽，无苦集灭，无智亦无得，亦无所得，故菩提萨埵依般若波罗蜜多，心无挂碍，无挂碍故无有恐怖，远离颠倒梦想，究竟念三世诸佛依般若波罗蜜多，故得阿耨多罗三藐三菩故知般若波罗蜜多是大神咒，是大无上咒，是无等等咒，能除一切苦，真实不虚，故说波罗蜜多咒。即说咒曰：揭谛揭，般若揭谛，般若僧揭谛，菩提萨婆
越做吃的。 Okay, so today this is the second day of our teaching discourse. The usual prayer that you say, we didn't have discussion yesterday, but it's your prayer says, may the three poisonous afflictions be dispelled or eliminated, and may the light of wisdom shine forth or be ablaze. So there's no need for us to use reason to prove that we want happiness and not suffering. So even down to the animals, everyone wants happiness. According to Buddhism, the root of our suffering are twofold: that of the self-cherishing attitude and the grasping or clinging at true independent existence in things and beings. And so these are the causes of our suffering: the attachment, hatred, and ignorance or confusion. So we call these three the three poisons, the mental afflictions, the three poisons. So we want happiness but not suffering. And so sins and the mental afflictions are the causes of our suffering. And these mental afflictions, all of them are rooted in ignorance. Now, in order to eliminate these three ignorance, we need to develop the wisdom. So it will not be eliminated through our prayers and mantras, but through the meditation on this selflessness. And so by making this the wisdom ablaze, the wisdom of selflessness ablaze, we can eliminate this grasping at self. And then next line, the third line refers to bodhicitta, which says, may I engage in bodhisattva practices. And this prayer is quite comprehensive prayer. So today's discourse is for the purpose of making our wisdom blades forth. So we have the teaching on the essence of true eloquence. There is a saying, after having studied the scriptures, philosophical scriptures, if it is not integrated within oneself, then even if one may be a great scholar, a geshe who is a great scholar, who is able to answer and challenge any questions in debate, but if he or she is not able to use the knowledge that they have learned through debate and all the different procedures of learning the philosophical texts, then it doesn't serve that purpose. Then the Tibetan saying is that the flowery knowledge of the geshes don't bear any fruit. As Tushik Rinpoche used to joke with me, he was a great master. He went to Lhasa and he had the intention to receive teachings on Lamrim, the stages of the path to enlightenment. And so in Tagukani in Lhasa, he received teachings from a geshe. So he would tease me at times about this saying. And so Je Rinpoche Je Rinpoche says in his in his destiny fulfilled. In the beginning, I sought much extensive learning. In the middle, all teachings dawned to me as spiritual advice. And so he underwent the huge learning first, and then integrated the teaching within himself. And because of that, in the middle, all teachings dawned as spiritual advice to him. And then in the end, he says, I practiced all day and night. All this I dedicate for the spread of the teaching. So, the teaching of the Buddha, and particularly this tradition of the Manjushri in person, Master Tsongkhapa, we should follow in his footsteps, because mere learning is not enough. So if you only follow with blind faith, you will not be able to develop your intelligence and wisdom further. And so your faith in the teaching must grow and develop further through the use of your intelligence and understanding of the teaching. And so since we have, as humans, this marvelous brain intelligence, we must use it. As Je Tsongkhapa himself mentions, in the beginning I sought much extensive learning. And so the three trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom should be integrated within ourselves. As Abhisamaya Alamkara says, so the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas are led to their goal of Arahatship through the understanding of the basis, and then the Bodhisattvas are able to serve or fulfill their goal to help others through what is known as the understanding or the knowledge of the path. And then the Buddhas are able to give teachings, varieties of teachings in accordance with the mental dispositions of the disciples, or sentient beings. And therefore, we have these three vehicles, the Shravaka's vehicle, the Pratyeka Buddha vehicle, and the Bodhisattva vehicle. And so, therefore, we need to pursue study of the teaching, and the purpose of which is to gain control over our emotions, mind. And therefore, Je Tsongkhapa says, in the end, I practiced all day and all night. So, in order to dispel the darkness of ignorance within ourselves, it's important. Education is very important, learning. So I tell the Tibetans this, that it's very important to study the teaching. And you, the Chinese and Taiwanese also, it's important for you to study. So I usually tell that we need to be 21st century Buddhists. So of course, in our traditional societies, people had faith, and then they just took the teaching for granted. And today we are in the 21st century. And we have access to all different kinds of religious traditions, unlike when we were in Tibet. And then there is modern science, which has also advanced, mainly focusing on the external material development. So at such a time, we need to use this intelligence, which is able to discern what is right from wrong. We need to think about what religion is. Is it just an old custom, or is it beneficial even today? So what is the use of Buddhism today? You need to think and do critical analysis and try to understand the teaching of the Buddha. And when you gain a good understanding through your critical reasoning, then you will become a 21st century Buddhist. And so, therefore, education or learning is very important. As I said yesterday, I memorized Madhyamaka Entering the Middle Way, and the Ornament for Clear Realization when I was a child. And then I also studied the collected topics, the study of mind and mental factors, and then awareness, and then the study of logic and reasoning. So for these, I studied on the basis of Prabhuchok's texts. In those days, I didn't really have any much interest in learning. But as I grew up and gained more and more experience, I've found that what I studied in those days are proving very beneficial today. And Madhyamaka philosophy or philosophical view is very important, and Madhyamaka Avatara is very precious, therefore. And therefore, in the middle, all teachings dawn upon me as spiritual advice, and in the end, I practice all day and all night. And why do we do study and practice of the teaching? Is to serve the Dharma and sentient beings. And on a daily basis, we do this kind of dedication where we say, just as the hero Manjushri and Samandabhadra have dedicated their merits, likewise I will do so. And so the followers of the Master Tsongkhapa and the Sakya tradition also, the followers of Lamdre and then the Kagyu tradition, the ornament of jewel liberation, the precious liberation, and so forth. So each of these traditions can also make, followers of these traditions can make their prayers for the spread and flourishing of the Dharma, for the benefit of sentient beings as well. So we'll go through the both essence of true eloquence. As I already mentioned about the prayer the Chinese do, may all the poisonous afflictions be dispelled. So, and then may the wisdom be ablaze. So, with regard to wisdom, there are those of the wisdom which pertain to the 5 sciences of learning, and then the wisdom of the ultimate reality. And so this text that we are going to go through establishes the view of emptiness. So in the beginning of the teaching of the Buddha himself did teach the very coarse level of selflessness. And then in the perfection of wisdom discourses of the Buddha, he went into more detailed teachings on this wisdom of selflessness, the view of selflessness. And as it is mentioned in this elucidation of the intention, so in the beginning of the lecture for this text, Tsongkhapa mentions that the teaching of the Buddha should be based on reasoning. So we need to follow the teaching on the basis of reasoning and not just faith. And so this shows the emphasis on the critical analysis of the teaching of the Buddha, and therefore the study of logic and reasoning epistemology becomes very important. So masters like Diknaka and Dharmakirti, their writings on epistemology and logic are very important. And the Chinese Dharma brothers and sisters, these texts by these two masters, Diknaka and Dharmakirti, may not be translated into they may not have been translated into Chinese yet. So the Pramana Samuchaya by Diknaka and Pramana Vartika Karika by Dharmakirti, are there translations of these texts in Chinese? If not, if you could translate the root text of Dharmakirti's Pramana Vartika Karika, which is, of course, very terse and tough text, but it's very important if you could translate it into your language. As I mentioned before, I studied Yongzing collected topics by Yongzing Pubuchok. So if you could also translate this text, which goes through the small, intermediate, and the great collected topics, and then also the study of mind, logic, and mind and awareness, and also study of logic or reasoning. So this could be used as intellectual academic subjects. So logic or study of mind and awareness teaches about our mind and emotions. And then Tagrik teaches about logic and reasoning. And so we can use these as secular academic subjects. So if you could, the Bliss and Wisdom organization could do more about translating these texts and studying them, not only doing prayers and recitations as practitioners. So by studying these texts, it has the significance. The studying these texts has the significance of developing your critical faculty to check into what is right and wrong. So in the beginning of Tsongkhapa's Essence of True Eloquence, it mentions so in the Sutra Elucidation of Intention, a scripture, so in accordance with the mental dispositions of those to be tamed, the disciples, So accordingly, the Buddha gave different teachings. This text mentions. So what are those teachings that were given for the purpose of different disciples, and what are those things which we need to practice? So by using our critical faculty to see right from wrong, without which we will not be able to be liberated. So in the text quotes Rashtapala's question of Rashtapala, where it mentions that the Buddha used various reasons and techniques to lead beings to liberation. And therefore, Masters the Sangha and Nagarjuna explained these teachings of the Buddha. So it says, having seen the extreme difficulty of realizing the actuality of things, without which there is no liberation from the world. So right after the Rashtapala Sutra, the world's compassionate, the compassionate teacher introduced the living beings to this realization through the many doors of reasoning and technical procedures. Thus, the discriminating should exert themselves in the techniques for realizing their thatness. So there are the different teachings the Buddha gave, which are, some are interpretable, some are provisional, and some are definitive. And then there are teachings on bodhicitta, the spirit of the altruistic spirit of enlightenment. And with regards to this word, bodhicitta, there are two parts to it in the Buddhist bodhisattva practice. One is the wisdom, and the other is compassion. Compassion observes sentient beings, focuses on sentient beings, and the wisdom focuses on enlightenment. So those teachings which teach the ultimate suchness or reality as it is are the definitive teachings. The others are provisional or interpretive. So those teachings which cannot be taken literally on the face value. So the ultimate reality is the definitive meaning, and then the conventional reality is the provisional. And so those scriptures or teachings of the Buddha which teach the ultimate reality are the definitive teachings, and then those which teach conventional realities, which needs to be interpreted and cannot be taken literally, are the provisional or the interpretable teachings. So in this way, we make the differentiation between the interpretable and the definitive teachings of or meaning of the teaching of the sutras. So it goes through. So we come across the text. So the Lord proclaims right under the chapter 1, inquiry to resolve contradictions. The Lord proclaims in many discourses in the intrinsic identity of aggregates, their characteristics of production and destruction, their abandonment and full understanding. As with the aggregates, so does he proclaim the 12 media, the dependent origination, the 4 foods. Thus does he proclaim the intrinsic identity, the thorough knowledge, the abandonment, the realization, the meditations on the 4 noble truths, the intrinsic identity, variety, plurality, and so forth. So in the question, the Paramartha Samudgata asked that the Buddha in some teachings taught that things have essential identity, whereas in others he says they do not have any essential identity. So he asked, why did the Buddha give these different teachings? So it doesn't matter. So we'll have more question and answer session later. So not only the prepared questions, but also we'll have more extra questions. So if you have doubts, I mean, it'll help to dispel those doubts. If you ask your questions, this is my what I want to do. So the essence here is that in the first turning of the wheel of the Dharma, the Buddha taught as if things have their own self-characteristics. Whereas in his teaching at the Vulture Peak, the teachings on the perfection of wisdom and so forth, the Buddha taught that everything from form to the omniscient mind, everything is devoid of any intrinsic identity. And then the teachings in the perfection of wisdom were which were not so accessible or understandable to some disciples. Then he gave the third turning. He turned the third Dharma wheel in Vaishali. And so in that, he taught the 3, what are known as the 3 natures, or and so the 3 natures are the imputed, the dependent, and the perfect nature. And so the third turning of the wheel of Dharma were given in Vaishali and other places. So whereas it was taught in the perfection of wisdom teachings that everything from form to omniscient state of Buddha are without any essential core, which was not comprehensible to some disciples, and therefore the Buddha made a distinction in the elucidation of the Intention Sutra, that he taught these with the 3 natures in mind. So in the first turning, he taught that things have their own self-defined characteristics, whereas in the second turning, that the things have everything is devoid of any intrinsic essential core. And therefore, some people have difficulty understanding the Buddha's teaching, and so he gave the third turning. So this sutra unraveling the thought or the elucidation of the intentions teaches the non-duality of subject and object. So quantum physics also touches on this point. So according to quantum physicists, they say that things like form and sound and so forth do appear as if they have some objective existence, yet they do not exist the way they appear to us. Because if you go down to the small particles and subparticles, and then the moment by moment change of those particles, it is very similar to the Chittamatra view. Not just relying on the appearance itself, but if you go deeper into the nature of the things, the reality, it almost comes down to saying, according to the quantum physics, that things are merely imputed or designated by our labels, and so things do not exist the way they appear to us. Objectivity. So things exist by through our conceptions, which conceive them. So the external objects are said to be in the same nature as the subjective mind. And so the subject and the objective mind, which perceives the object and the object itself, both of them are devoid of any externality, and they are devoid of any duality. So when we see beautiful things, we become attached. When we see unwanted things, we become angry. And so, according to the Chittamatras, they are merely in the nature of the mind itself. So the Chittamatra view helps in reducing our attachment, the strong kind of clinging to external things, to which we become either attached or have aversion to. So according to the Chittamatra, if you understand it well, when you have some disturbance, you will not point your finger at the things outside of you, but point your finger to your mind. So this. So in the this elucidation of the Intention Sutra teaches that. And then the questions of Maitreya, Sutra requested by Maitreya and so forth, teaches the Vipassana. So elucidation of the Intention Sutra scripture has 10 chapters. So the differentiation between the three different turnings of the wheel of Dharma comes in the Sutra Unraveling the Thought. And then the Sutra requested by Maitreya teaches those of the calm abiding and others. So I think I should move on to the Madhyamaka section, which is interpreting the section interpreting the scriptures according to Aksharamati Sutra. So discriminating or differentiating the sutras between interpretable and the definitive, according to Akshayamati Sutra. So this has two sections, giving the statements of the sutra and then how they are interpreted. So Master Chandakirti's clear word, and also Viveka's text, the blaze of wisdom. So based on these, the interpretations according to the Madhyamaka philosophy is done. So according to Akshayamati Sutra, it mentions what are the definitive and what are those of the interpretable. Those which teach the conventional reality are known as the interpretable meaning sutras, and those which teach ultimate reality, the definitive. And then there are the four reliances, which are to say that you do not rely on the person but on the teaching, and within the teaching not on the interpretable word, not to the words but the meaning, and within the meaning not the interpretable but the definitive, and within that not just ordinary consciousness but wisdom.
심지어 강사 기부대 최전적 참여통도 시스. 다전에 뭐 디샴데 우마나와레 네베 통기 강로 자셔나 참아도 잡아도 던데 모두 전에 셔봐 강이 못돼. 야. 테네 로시도 현재 강도야 장원 민입이 치료 시송디 지들 때마다 이제 된 예매를 장에서 제나 참아도 제베 초장 대매 줘봐.
So it mentions that the teachings, the definitive teachings, must be those which teach the ultimate reality, not just the valid cognition and so forth.
Teni sunrogi tengi niwu ngakwa chulos da zalaya kada gobulurugi zawashirogi ane godaga.
So in Master Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika, he makes this praise to the Buddha, salutation to the Buddha on the basis of teaching of the dependent origination, devoid of the 8 extremes. So at the end of that text, Master Nagarjuna pays his homage out of expresses his gratitude to the Buddha, whom he says, moved by his compassion toward the sacred Dharma, to rid us of all distorted views, and therefore I pay homage to the Gautama. And so, moved by his compassion, he taught, he gave his teachings. So, in order to rid us of all distorted views, what the Buddha has taught are of the view which is free from the dependent origination. So on the basis of, from the point of view of the nature of things or identity, he taught that there's no arising or a cessation. And then in terms of the continuity, so in terms of the objects, he taught that things have no coming and going, and in terms of the continuity, here there's no annihilation and permanence, and then in terms of the designation that things are not neither one nor different. And so though these the arisal and the cessation of things do exist, but when you do analysis of them to try to find them within the objects themselves, you cannot find anything. Though without doing any kind of ultimate analysis into how things exist, we can say they do exist. But when you do this kind of critical analysis to pinpoint the identity of things, you will not be able to point your finger at anything. And therefore, when your mind is absorbed in this final reality of things, the diversities of things will kind of disappear from your perception. So from the point of view of action, agent, and the objects, of course, we use all kinds of designations. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm not my body, not my mind, not my speech. We say my body, my speech, and my mind, and these three are not me. And so if you try to find or search for the body, speech, and mind, or the I, you will not find that from within the aggregates. And though that is the case, the non-Buddhist traditions assert that there is some entity separate from the body, speech, and mind, and they call it the Atma. So it seems this theory of Atma is helpful to prove or to understand that we go, to understand past and future lives. So our body, our senses, these physical senses like eye and so forth, are of this life. So it is just there for one life. And therefore, the philosophical schools like the Savatantrika Madhyamakas point to the I, because it goes from one life to the next. They point to the consciousness, the mental consciousness, as the identity of a person that goes from life to life, whereas according to the Prasangikas, nothing whatever, arisal, cessation, and so forth, can be found when we critically search for their identity. And Master Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Avatara says that nothing whatever, the forest and the pots, and those of the definiendum and so forth, cannot be found when we put them under the test of the critical reasoning, of the sevenfold reasoning. So nothing whatever, he says, has any existence in and of themselves from their own side. though birth, cessation, and so forth do exist. And so, in the salutation verse of Mula Madhyamaka Karika, he says, so when our mind is absorbed in this critical, the final reality of things, nothing whatever would be seen as having any arisal, cessation, and so forth. Yet, we do have the appearances, but we don't do any kind of analysis. And so, through our critical analysis into the nature of things, what we will see is that things have no intrinsic, essential core in and of themselves. And then when we develop this understanding further and further, we will gain deeper insight. And in Madhyamaka Avatara, it says, towards the end of the sixth chapter, thus illuminated by the rays of the wisdom light, the Bodhisattva's, it's the verse 224, sixth chapter, and that 25. Thus, though his mind may rest continuously in cessation and so forth. So when we do analysis into the nature of things, what we reject is any intrinsic essential core in things and beings. And so in verses 34, 35, 36, there are those of the rejections of intrinsic existence, because there would be the logical absurdities, four logical absurdities that you would have to face, which are that an Arya being's meditative equipoise mind would be destroyer of the real entities. And then the conventional truth would withstand analysis of reasoning, ultimate reasoning mind, ultimate reasoning, and then the ultimate production cannot be denied.
강게 동도 땡중당 우메람도 된지고 숭주 추고메바 예산에서 차살로스 삼지미 집어 되발래자 강게 뭐고 땡중남 뭐메바 니수소 이시 냠미 삼미죠 빼면서 차살로스 가서마시 주사를 어다 대야다 가서
So these are the praises to the Buddha. And with regard to emptiness, the reason why we say things are things are devoid of, things are empty, is because they are dependently arisen. So as Master Nagarjuna, as Mulamada Karika says, that what arises through dependence are explained as emptiness, and that itself is designated, and that is the middle way. And therefore, because things are dependently arisen, they are devoid of any independent existence. So therefore, this reasoning of dependent origination has the significance or the power to dispel both the extreme views simultaneously, which may have to be interpreted. So when we say things are things are dependent, things arise through dependence on others, and therefore they are devoid of any independent existence. Because things are not without any dependence, therefore they do exist. And so both these understandings of the lack of independent existence and that things are dependent can be understood. So when we understand things are dependently originated, we understand that they are empty of any intrinsic existence. And when we say things are intrinsically empty or devoid of any intrinsic existence, we understand that then this brings the understanding of dependence. So we'll stop here for today. The questions?
尊敬的法王，感谢您为我们宣说变了不了义善说上论。弟子想请问，就是法王这几天为我们宣说的，佛法要破除的我这个呢，是不观地安立处。
So does the instinctive grasping mind hold on to the self and aggregates as truly one in nature? What is its mode of apprehension of its object? Does the instinctive self-grasping mind hold on to the self and aggregates as truly one in nature or essence? What is its modes of apprehension of its object? So in our mind, when we think me or I, we first have the perception of the body or the aggregates, and then on the basis of that, there is a sense of an I. And so I don't know if this sense of I holds on to the aggregates, but the sense of I arises on the basis of aggregates. And therefore, because that is the case, there's some philosophical schools that say that the I or the self must be found from amongst the aggregates. And so the Chittamatras point to Alaya Vijnana, the foundational consciousness. So when we have the sense of an I, we have a sense of this I as if it's independent from the aggregates. So in the 22nd chapter of Mula Madhyamaka Karika, it says, not one with the aggregates, not different from the aggregates. It is not in them, nor are they in it. The Tathagata does not possess the aggregates, and therefore what is Tathagata? And so I use this verse to apply to myself. Apply this to myself. I said, instead of Tathagata, I do not possess the aggregates. Who am I? So since the aggregates are the basis of a designation of a person, we cannot have any of the five aggregates as being the person. We cannot point to them. So I don't think this innate grasping at a self holds on to the aggregates. So this instinctive grasping of mind does not have this holding on to the aggregates as one with the self. So the Savatantrika Madhyamakas say that a self must have its own intrinsic identity, and therefore they point to the sixth, the mental consciousness, as the identity of a person. So the instinctive sense of I does not hold on to the aggregates, I think, as being of the same nature as self. Next question. Can modern science prove emptiness? And can science prove that meditation can eliminate mental afflictions and so forth?
那另外就是法王提到说，在根本定要修如虚空的空性，后得智修如幻化的空性，以及在修空性能灭除烦恼等等，是否都能够用科学来证明？谢谢法王。
주원이반이 인주인기 텐리라 때네 동방이다 동방이 공바데 묘몽 세룬소 줍뉴상
As of yet, the modern scientists have not paid much attention to the understanding of the mind and emotions, or psychology. But today, they are beginning to understand the significance and the connection of our mind, such as love, compassion, to our peace of mind. So they do explain our mind on the basis of the brain function. So they do not have much understanding of how the destructive emotions arise in us, which they have not paid much attention earlier. And so today they are beginning to take more and more interest, paying attention to understanding the workings of our mind. So they do not, the science does not have not yet paid attention to these emptiness. So today the scientists are even agreeing the importance of love and compassion. And so love and compassion have their opponent, which are our arrogance, anger, hatred. So when we grow attachment to some beautiful things, you grow that attachment on the basis of a sense of an I. You say, that thing is beautiful because it appears to you as beautiful. So the I, or this if you are able to understand that this I that you hold on to has no sound basis, it will help to reduce the clinging to the sense of an I. So far, the scientists have not paid much attention to this, but gradually they may gain more understanding. They may pay attention to it. So the scientists do not talk about destructive emotions as such, but the understanding of dependent origination is something that the scientists are paying some attention to. Next.
I come from Myanmar. 现在来台湾已经3年了。然后要问问题之前，就是先希望能给你 做2个提醒这样。第一个呢，就是我们弟子们班就刚开始开上文这样，希望呢你能为我们已经
So
开学的或者是
what is the difference between these the absence of true existence of dreams
做很大的一个提醒
and the absence of an intrinsically established dream?
就是希望法王你能把就是你所有的教的显密的所有传承，还有正的，还有所有有经验的教授传承都能传给弟子们。希望呢，对，就是还有那个请那个翻译的珍贵的翻译人帮忙翻译一下，然后希望大家能用那个热烈的掌声来做一个提醒的缘起。然后就是
He comes from Burma.
就是我一直要问的问题就是在《金刚经》里面说到说一切有为法，如梦幻泡影，如露亦如电，应作如是观。请问观察诸法如梦等时，梦本身也是无自性的。请问观察诸法如梦的无地时，与梦的无自性的差别在哪里？谢谢法王。Thank you very much.
空指望嘛，各位阿肉呢，等你给我认不清你啦，空给许多你有的，许多当波的。
So he wanted to say 2 things before asking his question. First is, since he is engaged, he is pursuing his studies of Dharma, he seeks His Holiness's blessings for his success in his studies, for him and his classmates. And then the tradition of Nalanda, both the study and pursuit of study and meditation practice, so the question was already asked. So first of all, you need to understand what is it that you are rejecting when you wish to understand emptiness, gain insight into emptiness. So otherwise, you may say things are like dreams, and therefore they do not have any the true existence. There would be some grosser understanding of that. And so the subtle understanding is that things have no true independent existence in and of themselves. And so the analogy of dream is used in different schools. So according to the different schools' understanding of what their view of selflessness is, the analogy of dream would make different sense. So in dream, we see different things, but we cannot point our finger at anything. But in life, we see diversity of things, but things have no independent existence. And so, according to the understanding of the philosophical view of emptiness or selflessness, there would be different understandings or interpretations of the analogy of dream as well.
My Holiness, I pay homage to you. I'm from Singapore, and I hope that you'll be able to visit Singapore very soon, and the rest of the countries in Asia. I've got a question to ask, and I'll be asking it in Chinese. 缘起是观察无地时的正理之王。
Why is the reasoning of dependent arising the king of all reasonings to prove the lack of true existence of phenomena?
的缘故吗？如果不能同时的话，别于其他如离地时的意义， 有何差别 ？Thank you, My Holiness.
只我西巴呢，等这个日巴的，等巴的没法准备日备脚步，因为救生你抗议呢。
So regarding this, when we study the perfection of wisdom scriptures, we use the reasoning called lack of one and many, which helps in proving that things have no independent existence, but it doesn't help establish how things exist. Whereas the reasoning of dependent origination says that things have no objective existence from their own side. So dependence shows that things are not independent, and origination shows that things arise through dependence. So understanding of dependent origination itself doesn't have the realization of emptiness as such. But when you understand that this understanding of dependent origination brings up the understanding or the insight into emptiness, and then when you say things are empty of independent existence, that in turn helps to understand that things are relative or so in Pelmarteva by John Lama Rinpoche, he says, so then dependence shows does not deny or reject that of the reality of emptiness, and Jung, which means arising, also conforms to the worldly convention. And therefore, the teaching on dependent origination, which is an authoritative teaching word of the Buddha, and so the understanding of both dependence and emptiness is brought about by this understanding of dependent origination with equal force. So I reflected on emptiness for over 60 years now, and with regard to bodhicitta, over 50 years. And so having reflected and meditated and thought about emptiness for 60-something years, I have found that my understanding has grown over the years, stronger and stronger. So what I pride in is when I reported my experience of emptiness to my late senior tutor, Yongzin Ling Rinpoche, he became very pleased and told me, oh, before long you will become a space yogi, a yogi of space. So I have quite a degree of understanding of emptiness. So when I do my meditation on emptiness, based on Master Nagarjuna's first verse from the Mula Madhyamaka Karika chapter 22, neither one with the aggregates nor different from it. It is not in them. They are not in it. It is not in them. Tathagata does not possess the aggregates. What is Tathagata? And who am I sitting on this meditation cushion? Or who is this person? And so I get the sense that this person who is doing the meditation on the cushion does not exist independently, whereas the person himself does exist. And similarly, the objects in relation to which we become either attached or have aversion. So this understanding of emptiness helps in reducing our attachment and anger. And so emptiness does not deny the existence of things as such, but how things exist, appear to us, is what is countered by this understanding of mere nominality of things. And it helps to reduce our strong grasping and clinging to objects as either good or bad and so forth. So this kind of understanding and insight and experience must come would come gradually over years. For me, it has taken 60 years or so. So you need to familiarize yourself with this understanding of emptiness and dependent origination. So my Dharma brothers and sisters should use your critical faculty to see the reality of things. So if you familiarize your mind with the emptiness and dependent origination and so forth, you'll see this attachment, anger, and so forth. These destructive emotions do not have any sound basis and do not have any support or basis on the logic and reason, whereas the mere luminous nature of the mind, which is taught in Mahayana Uttara Tantra, is very significant. It says the Buddha's body radiates everywhere, and the emptiness nature of the mind of the Buddha and sentient beings are not undifferentiated. And then the sentient beings have the potential for Buddhahood. Therefore, the sentient beings are and do possess that Buddha nature. So what this shows is that we can become enlightened because the afflictions that are in our mind, the defilements, they are adventitious, whereas the basic luminous or the clear light nature of the mind itself does not need to be cultivated as such. It is there within us, and therefore since the defilements are temporary and the qualities can be developed and cultivated in us because of this luminous nature of the mind, which is there already, it shows the possibility to attain that of the omniscient or the omniscient state. And then all these destructive emotions, the mental afflictions arise as long as we have the three visions of whitish appearance, reddish increase, blackish near attainment. Once they cease, then there won't be any mental afflictions arising. And so the 80 conceptions stop. In the dissolution process that we go through, then we go through the dissolution of the whitish appearance and so forth, and then we come to the experience of the actual clear light. And so when we study about these things, you'll be able to understand that are taught in Tantra. Also, we understand that the qualities are innate. As Mahayana Uttara Tantra says, the defilements are temporary, adventitious, and qualities are innate. We'll understand it better. So in the spiritual instruction for equating and exchanging, equaling and exchanging self and others, it is mentioned that equaling and exchanging of self and others can be done because of their not being self-established, but merely conventionally designated. So can there be an exchange, equaling and exchanging between a pillar and a vase?
주왕아바네 다생염제기다. 다당 생이보 랑을 마주지 민대 샤삼기 이메나 다생 제룽도 송. 대다로에나 가와당 본방이보장 대당 쏨베 땡이양 펜송도 제룽암.
그래서 다생염제 당원에 랑을 마주지 민대 샤삼기 다생 제룽사디 땡에 세우시 마소.
So I don't understand the question. So when we say things are merely designated by name, the purpose of this is to destroy our clinging to some kind of a solidity and concreteness in things and self. So when you have a good understanding of what is meant by I or others, self and others, through the understanding of the view of emptiness, it will help to reduce clinging to. So that doesn't have much relation to the exchanging self and others. So for the equaling exchanging self and others, you need to see the disadvantages of self-cherishing attitude and the advantages of cherishing others over oneself. So there is no point, there is no way a pillar and a pot can have exchange and equaling between themselves.
丁力法王，您这2天一直强调，于是色素上去寻找诸法存在呢，从境上呢，是完全找不到，以自己的力量形成自己的属性以及作用。
So these are extra questions now.
那么分别心安立诸法跟安立它的作用，是没有分别心安立就没有作用吗？
So on a daily basis, because of different things that we do, we have all kinds of emotions, attachment, anger. We are overcome by them.
那这个跟这个俱舍论所说的所谓的识别由业生，以及他松所说的万法由心任意所造，这3个的差别何在呢？谢谢法王。
谢谢。
주와 주반이 최탐제 류마샤나 탕예도 자제 밑에베 루디베 또베 샤바 쌈다 데네 죄레 레레 지데 나소기에 샤바다 센담기에
they're bringing up the
샤바소
third day question. If things are not mentally designated, would not have actions, agents, etc. be conventionally feasible? Yeah. According to the Prasangikas school, things are merely designated by our conceptual mind. And Abhidharma Kosha says the myriad world is born through karma, and the Chittamatra say everything is fabricated by mind. What are the differences between these 3 assertions? So here, when the presentation of the basis, the path, and the results, on the basis of understanding that things, on the basis of assertion that things have some objective existence, and on the basis of the understanding that things have no intrinsic existence. So because of this difference in the view of the emptiness, so there are different ways we can understand the have the presentations of path, basis, path, and result. Whereas with regard to undermining our grasping at subtle, the subtle grasping at true existence, although we may say that things have no external existence, it doesn't really help much. Whereas when we are able to say that things are merely designated by name, it helps to counter this subtle defilement or the grasping at true existence. So we need to understand that better in greater detail, because all these emotions, negative emotions, destructive emotions, arise through what is known as the identity view, the view of transitory collection or identity view, as Master Madhyamaka Avatara says. So because we hold on to some kind of absolute good or absolute bad in things and beings, we have attachment, anger, hatred, and so forth. So when you see that things have no absolute existence and whatever, then you will not have that kind of a grasping at true existence. Although good and bad and so forth do exist, we are not denying these, but we have this sense of a good which is absolute, bad which is absolute, and so forth. So when you have some familiarity with the view of emptiness and study the Madhyamaka texts well, and also Master Tsongkhapa's the insight sections of Great Lamrim Chemo and the Intermediate Lamrim, and then the commentaries on Mula Madhyamaka Karika and Madhyamaka Avatara, I mean, you will have very clear understanding of what is meant by mere designation, that things are merely designated. It is not enough just to have the text, but you need to read them, study them, and also try your best to gain some experience of this in your daily life. So if things are not mentally designated, would not actions, agents, etc. be conventionally feasible? So of course there are differences in the Chitta Matras explain things taking for granted that things have some objective existence from their own side. So if things were not mentally designated, so conventionally actions, agents, and so forth are there. We do not need to designate as such. So now on the basis of this designation, now on the basis of this conventional reality, we have attachment, anger, and so forth. When we see beautiful or so Mula Madhyamaka says the three poisons arise. Through the exaggerated outlook. So when we understand how attachment, anger, hatred, and so forth arise due to this exaggerated outlook on things, having absolute beauty or ugliness and so forth, and then you'll be able to reduce these attachment, anger, and so forth accordingly. So is that all?
그래서 저 사로
顶礼尊贵的法王，弟子这边还有问题，就是想要请教法王说，平常我们都因为工作还有事情忙碌，所以心经常为烦恼所自在。那如果在很忙碌的状况之下，有没有在短时间内，譬如说10分钟内，能够让心平静的方法？谢谢法王。
Thank you。谢谢。这件。哦。
So this is the last question. So when we do all kinds of things in our daily life, we grow attachment, anger, and so forth. We are overcome by them. And when we have not much time, so what is the method to reduce our attachment, anger, and these destructive emotions within 10 minutes when we have some time? So what disturbs our mind are those of negative emotions, the mental afflictions, attachment, anger, hatred. And so these also in turn happens because of our self-grasp or clinging to oneself. And so for that self-cherishing attitude to counter it, we need to cultivate cherishing others over oneself. And so for that you need to study Shantideva's Bodhisattvacharya Avatara and then apply the teaching. And then on the other hand, we grow anger, hatred, and so forth, attachment and so forth, because of this misperception of reality, that things have some independent existence. And so these destructive emotions, mental afflictions, are very cunning. And therefore, we need to counter them through familiarity with the view of emptiness. And when we grow in our experience, we will be able to maintain our peace of mind. And so here, familiarity, acquaintance, habituation with these are very important. So regarding the term meditation, in some translation we find that there are two Tibetan words. One is transitive and the other is intransitive. In any case, what this word means, meditation or bhavana, and so forth, means is that you familiarize yourself with the point of your meditation. In the beginning, you'll have difficulty. It is like going through the school system. In the beginning, you have difficulty learning the letters, but through acquaintance, you are able to learn them. And then at some point, you learn easily. And so similarly, it is with the case of our mind, that if you familiarize yourself, get habituated in the view of emptiness and so forth, they will become easier. So in Chankya Rinpoche Dorji's recognizing the mother, which is a song of the emptiness or view, if you're not able to hit home to the point, this mother may run away, he says. So as soon as an object comes into being, its emptiness also is established right there. So it's a matter of familiarity with the view of emptiness. So when you hear when you first hear that things are merely designated, it may be alarming for you. But when you acquaint your mind why things are merely designated and you understand it better, then it'll make better sense. So the understanding of selflessness or emptiness is something new that we are developing in this life, whereas the grasping at true existence in things is something that we are very familiar since time beginningless. And so we need to leave this old friend and try to acquaint with the new friend. So this grasping at true existence in things itself is, on the one hand, causing our unwanted suffering, and then on the other hand, the other half of the cause of suffering is this self-cherishing attitude. So these two have ruined us so far, and therefore, thanks to the Buddha Shakyamuni and masters like Nagarjuna and particularly Chandrakirti, we are able to open our eyes to how things do not have any self-existing, independent existence and so forth. So these will not go away merely through prayer. You need to familiarize yourself. So if you are able to reduce your anger, attachment, and so forth, it automatically be helpful. So our different preconceptions, suspicion, doubts, and so forth in relation to others is because of our self-cherishing attitude and also those of the self-grasping. So for that, to counter these, you could study this 6th and 8th chapters to reduce the extreme self-centeredness, self-cherishing attitude. Of course, it's not going to be easy. So, of course, we all cherish ourselves. Even the animals, we can see, the more selfish there are, the more lonely they remain. And in Lama Chepa Guru Puja, it is said that all our misfortunes come from self-cherishing attitude. And then, if you have more time for the view of emptiness, you can reflect on how our mental afflictions arise through this grasping and clinging to some independent existence in things. And so when you understand that, then you will be able to use the understanding of emptiness to counter that. And then slowly, gradually, you'll be able to develop your peace of mind. Otherwise, just remaining without doing anything and trying to find some calmness of mind, without much thinking, as if you are in a kind of a daydreaming or sleep, or without any, or in a thoughtlessness state, this may appear, which may appear to be helping, but when you meet with the conditions, you will have these negative thoughts and emotions, Whereas if you are able to understand how these negative emotions, that mental afflictions and so forth arise, what is the process by which they come about or they arise in you, and how to counter them through your understanding of cherishing others over oneself and emptiness and so forth, then you'll have real peace of mind. Otherwise, it will not help. So for me, so it takes time. For me, I'm nearly 86. The degree of peace that is in me has come about through the process of study, reflection, meditation over a long period of time. So not by falling asleep all the time or sleeping all the time. So perseverance is needed.
Thanks for your holiness teaching. We have learned so much today. See you tomorrow and goodbye. 请全场来宾起立恭法王。
大家可以相机手对着法王挥挥手，我们明天再见。